about to see is a mock therapy session, and I am going to be meeting with my client, Chip, who has been struggling with binge eating. And so, what we're going to be talking a little bit about is what those episodes look like, the emotions around what's causing the binge eating, and then we're going to kind of move into his relationship with food and with movement. We're going to talk through a little bit of intuitive eating and just kind of self-awareness and just start deconstructing some of those negative ideals that Chip has had about what it means to be healthy and what it means to be successful. And I hope you enjoy. All right. Hey, Chip, welcome back.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Good. So I know we've been talking a lot. There's been a lot of stuff going on at work. So how have things been going since the last time I saw you?
It's been pretty stressful. I can't take breaks at all when I need them, and I feel like I'm working all the time. And then when I get home at night, I'm just let all my frustration out then, and that's when it happens.
And what happens?
I realized I've been going all day, haven't taken a break, haven't drinking enough water, and then I want to binge.
Okay. So did you feel like anything in particular happened this past week that made it even harder to not engage in the binging behavior?
Yeah, a couple of people at work were talking about going for lunch and taking a break, but I really wanted to impress my boss and get my work finished ahead of time, or at least on time.
Yeah.
And so I worked straight through my meals and thought, this is all right. I'll go home tonight, eat a reasonable amount, but I didn't.
Okay. Did you find that that was like an everyday thing, or was it just on the days where people were like leaving to get lunch?
More on the days people wanted to leave. I wanted to go, but I just wouldn't let myself.
Why do you think that is? Aside from trying to impress your boss, do you think there's anything else that's contributing?
It made me feel good to know that I was going to be the one who would get top recommendation for the next promotion, and that the boss would see what I'm doing.
Okay. So really looking for that like external praise to say that like you're doing something that's amazing and we're noticing that and that's great.
Right.
Is that what happened?
It is. But then when I went home, I really hated myself after binging. And I had to think, was that even worth it? Is the bad that I feel now worth the good that I felt earlier today? And it wasn't.
Yeah. So what do you think happened between like that really awesome feeling of the praise to like getting home and thinking like, man, I'm a lot more stressed than I want to be. And like now I'm going to kind of cope with the food.
Just taking stock of me and what I want to do. Kind of like we've talked about. I want the acceptance of others. But I'll do whatever I have to get it. And I had such a high today at work, even though I was grinding and getting it done. And then everyone else just didn't have to. Or chose not to.
Yeah.
So then when I got home, it was just me and there was no one to praise me. And so I disappointed myself again.
So what do you think is keeping you from praising yourself at this point?
I don't know that I'm as good as maybe other people see me. I have a hard time with accepting what's good and what needs to be fixed with me. I see everything as needing to be fixed.
So how did the binging help that feeling?
For those 30 minutes, I felt great. I had no worry. I hadn't thought about work, what other people might even think of me. But then when I finished, I was completely defeated. And this keeps happening. It's not as much as it was.
Yeah.
But I compulsively weigh myself. And when I can see the effects of this, it's taken me further from my goal.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, it's kind of like we've talked about. So this is why this cycle is a little bit crazy, right? Because eating is amazing. It makes us feel good. It brings a lot of comfort to what we're doing. And then when you eat so much in one sitting, then afterwards, like all of those feelings set in. I'm just like, oh my gosh, what did I do? The shame, the guilt, the regret, like maybe some of the disgust and frustration, you know, all of those like really, really big, heavy feelings. And then it makes it like it wasn't even worth it to begin with because those fleeting moments of happiness are gone.
I know, and we talk about that, but I can't stop it in the moment. And I keep going back to it. I want to do something different, but nothing will satisfy that craving until after I've done it. And I tried writing in my food journal, and it makes me disgusted seeing that afterwards.
Sure.
But then I look the next day when I haven't eaten at all during work, and I'm proud of that because I'm not gaining and I'm doing something productive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, remember we talked about weight gain is, it's ever happening, right? Even if you don't eat anything, there's a possibility that your weight will fluctuate. And that's why it's really not the best indicator of success. And so if you're sacrificing your health, which is really what happens when you don't eat all day, and then it creates this need to binge at night, then there is really no success there, right? It's just like very surface level of what that is. And what we're realizing is that surface level success, like, doesn't really mean anything to you. It's not long lasting. It doesn't carry you through for long periods of time. It just happens. And then you're on to the next, like, okay, well, now I have to be great again and again and again.
I hear my colleagues talking sometime about how come I never go out with them when they have lunch or take breaks during the day. But they're social with each other. Mm-hmm. I'm there to work, and I want to move up.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be my career, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I want to move up, and putting in long hours and doing all this work is what it takes.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to do. But I have to decide, do I want that more than I want to be able to lose weight?
Yeah. Or even just be happy. Right? Like right now you're not very happy. So the likelihood of you getting a promotion and having more work and being happy, I don't think is super realistic either.
You're right.
Yeah,
that's true. I need to think on that.
Yeah. So when you're binging and you're in that moment, can you feel when you're starting to get full at all? Are you like aware of that?
Yeah, I am. The feeling of eating, my mind's at ease, I'm at rest, and I just don't want it to go away.
Yeah. Even though you're feeling full and you can recognize, okay, like I'm getting to the point where I should stop, you can't because you're chasing that feeling.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's the addiction piece of it, right? It's like chasing the high. It's like you're wanting to get there. You're wanting to get that piece of it.
Maybe I should use my journal when I'm in a binge instead of at the end of the day writing it down.
Sure.
As I do it. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and so I know I gave you probably a while ago, and I can give it to you again, the hunger fullness scale. And so that's really a good place to try to like kind of see where you're at, right? So it's good to know when you start eating, like where you're at on the scale, and then when you stop eating, where you're at, right? So how hungry you are versus how full you are at the end. And so we know that you're eating all the way up to a 7, which is like so full and so uncomfortable. But what if we were able to just like even knock that down to a 6?
It's a small step. I'd rather make a bigger one, but I'm willing to try it.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have to go like in what we can do, right? Because what happens if we say, okay, we'll get to a 5 and you don't get there? Like, you're probably going to be disappointed.
And I'll end up an 8.
Right.
I'll think about that for next time.
Yeah, and so I can definitely give that to you again. And I think the journaling piece is good, even if you're just journaling about how you're feeling. You know, like what's the emotion that got you there? Like, how are you feeling like when you're doing this? And what it's starting to sound like is it's not as satisfying as it used to be, even to be binging at this point, because you don't really want to do it, but you're doing it. And then afterwards you don't feel great. And then the next day you're just trying really hard not to do it again.
Falling into the same place.
Yeah.
Doing it again. Well, I'm thinking about I might, if the crowd at work takes a lunch break, maybe I'll go with them. I'm actually ahead in my work this week.
Okay.
So I could use the time to get away, clear my head, see what happens.
Yeah. Are you worried about eating with your coworkers and what that's going to look like?
Well, they've never seen me do it because I never leave my desk all day.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll get something healthier, and that way I won't be as hungry or have the need to binge.
Okay. What is healthy to you?
Probably what I always say I'm going to have for dinner, which is grilled chicken over a salad.
Yeah. Is that satisfying at all?
I always say I'm going to have it, but I never do.
Right.
need to make better choices too when I'm at the store. Because I almost am planning for that binge, and I know get a lot of frozen food. Get things that are not healthy to eat right before I go to bed. If I don't have the temptation, it's not there.
Sure.
So maybe I could even have something more of what I'd want for lunch and then go home and I would have the salad.
Yeah. And I really want to, kind of start changing the language around healthy versus unhealthy food, right? At this point, any food is going to be healthy for you because you're not eating, right?
Yeah.
So anything is great at this point. And I think it's really what we're noticing is you're really stuck in that restrict binge cycle, which is where you restrict yourself and then you binge and then you restrict and then you binge, right? And that's a really dangerous place to be. And that makes it a lot easier to get into this place of having the frozen foods and wanting to eat those because they're quick and they're easy. And by that point, you're really hungry, right? So you don't want to cook a 4-course meal when you're starving all day because who has the time, right? Like you're just trying to eat. And so no matter what you eat when you go out to lunch, like that's a victory. That's a step forward.
Yeah, it probably could help to further my relationships with my colleagues. They're good people.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to get to the point where I don't even get invited to do anything anymore because I don't go.
Right. And maybe that's a piece of acceptance at work that you're missing.
I didn't think about that. That could be. I'll try that this week.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I think the other thing to really be thinking about as well is just kind of moving more into the space where we are working on some of that intuitive eating. And so I know I kind of briefly touched on this before because I didn't think we were ready, but I think we're ready to kind of delve into it more. But that's really just where you are working on fixing your relationship with food and really relying on those hunger fullness cues, which is why it's important to use that scale. So you can say, okay, I'm going to eat when I'm hungry. I'm going to stop when I'm full. And it allows you to kind of give into these cravings that you're having, right? And so that probably seems really overwhelming right now, just to think about, oh, I'm just going to eat, and like all of those kinds of things. So we'll have to start with really restoring those hunger fullness cues, which is why I was like, let's use that scale. Like, let's see where we're at. So you can start to really retrain your body because right now you're ignoring all of your hunger cues during the day and then you're ignoring your fullness cues at night. And so it would be silly to ask you to do anything outside of that because you don't even have those cues yet.
No, and we talked about meal prep, and I did it before. And I would have my ingredients for each day, every night, but it just wasn't satisfying. When I was planning it in my head, I wasn't hungry.
Yeah.
And so I would prep a meal, but then I'd want tomorrow's too.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with the meal prepping. It's too much availability. I would have to do it every day at the beginning of the day just for that night.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it for a full week.
So then don't do it for the full week.
No. But that's when I get home and think about it. Oh, frozen pizza would be so good.
Yeah.
Instead of having to think and cook and prep, clean up.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the beauty of intuitive eating is that you can sub out that plan for frozen pizza because you get to eat what you want when you want, right? It's like allowing yourself to have the freedom, right? That maybe you're not giving yourself currently because you're afraid of what's going to happen with your body, right? Like at this point, we can't even talk about like weight gain or weight loss because your metabolism's all messed up, like your hunger fullness cues aren't there. And realistically speaking, like you're just not treating your body very nicely. And so we've got to do all of those things before we can even consider getting to that other piece of it.
It's a lot more than I want to have to take on.
Yeah.
But that I have to.
Yeah. And that's kind of the messy part about these, eating disorders and having to deal with all of this is that it seems like it would be really simple of just like fixing the piece about the food, but it's also about the behavior and it's also about the feelings and, your past and, kind of overcoming a lot of those things. And so it becomes a very multifaceted, longer process than a lot of people think.
I just don't want to get back to the size that I was. before. I lost weight in the short term, but I'm steadily gaining it back, and I'm afraid of getting back there.
Yeah. Well, I think that fear is pushing you into a place that's still unhealthy regardless of your size.
You're right on that. And I've thought about it. Everything I'm doing is pushing me further and further from the goal weight that I want. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it doesn't matter. I'm not worried about my goal. I just want that instant feeling. I thought about joining the gym, but working 9 hours a day already, not taking a break, and then, after sitting at the desk all day, going to run, or even if I didn't join the gym, going for a run, doing free weights. I don't have the energy for it. I don't want to do it. It might burn calories.
But you don't have any calories to burn.
No, not during the day.
If you were to go after work, you'd be running on an empty tank, right? Like,
True.
You wouldn't get anything done anyway.
And after I binge, all I want to do is go to sleep.
Right. Well, I'm sure. Your body is shut down. You're full. You don't feel great. Yeah. Right. That's not the time to do it either. But, there's like the whole thing about like it's 20% exercise, 80% nutrition, right? And so if you don't want to exercise, like you don't have to. That's like the piece. You have to just allow yourself some of these freedoms. And that's where it's really about reminding yourself and you taking control and saying like, this is what I want. And so that's what I'm going to do. Like you're an adult, like you have the ability to be in charge of that. You don't have to follow necessarily the same rules as you did a couple years ago or even a month ago. You can change it up and kind of do whatever you need to move forward.
That's true. The exercise is just not for me.
Yeah.
I don't get the joy out of it or the feeling. People talk about the endorphins you get. I would go with friends of mine to the gym, and they said they've just left feel great, energized. I could barely make it back to the car. Then I get home, had no energy, or even worse, when I went before work, that's the worst.
Yeah.
I keep trying to like it, but it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. What's the rule that says that you have to like it?
Well, I'm at that age. All my friends, they look forward to going to the gym, running marathons. I'm just not into that.
Yeah. That sounds horrible. I don't want to run a marathon.
No.
Right.
I don't know why anyone would, but there are people who love it. I wonder, what else am I missing out on that everyone else finds pleasure from, and I don't?
Yeah. It's just, you have to find what is exciting for you. Right now, it's getting home at the end of the day and eating, right? Yeah. Which makes sense because you're starving. But that needs to be replaced with something else, anything else, right? Even if it's like reading or even if it's baking, right? Like you're doing something that like feels good for yourself. And so, running a marathon, whatever. But like, if you don't like going to the gym, you can't force yourself into going to the gym, right? Think about when you were little and it was like, people trying to force you to eat Brussels sprouts if you didn't want to eat them. That made you want to do it even less.
True.
So
it's a good analogy.
Your relationship with movement, I don't even like to call it exercise. I feel like that's even got a punitive ring to it, but moving your body looks like a bunch of different things. Cleaning your house after a day of work is movement. It's not traditional in the way of like crunches and treadmill and whatever, but like you could do that. Rearranging a room, you can do that. Standing and cooking a meal, that's still movement. So finding the things that make you feel good, that's what's important. But like being miserable and dragging yourself into the gym, like, look, why would you pay money for that? Why would you pay money to torture yourself is basically what it is.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Those are some good ideas I can implement.
Yeah. And just like, don't get sucked into having to do things a certain way or the same way as everybody else. There's a lot of space to be like, this is Chip's life and this is how Chip wants to do things. And everybody else can suck it, like they don't need to be on board with like what you're doing.
That's true. A lot of people don't like things I enjoy.
Right. And so you're allowed to create your roadmap, and that's kind of the thing about being an adult that like is a little bit of a cheat code where people are like, yeah, you can throw out the map at any point and start over.
Yeah.
And we just clutch on to these like old tattered maps that make no sense and lead us to nowhere and misery, instead of just being like, yeah, it's not working. Like, let me try something else.
Yeah. Just don't like having to start over, though. But
Yeah.
sometimes you have to.
I mean, what's the lesser of two evils here?
Right.
Getting a blank slate to decide like what, you can do to make yourself feel better, or continuing to do the same thing and feeling not great.
I would like to feel better. And that is my overall goal.
Yeah. And then some of it too is just about like reflecting and being able to see the progress that you have made to this point, right? So you're not binging as much, and that's a great thing, right? We're not looking for perfection here. We're just looking for improvement. And so that's improvement in and of itself. Even being able to sit here and say like, I don't even want to journal. I don't even want to do those things. Or like, even just the thought of having a grilled chicken salad, like, doesn't make me excited at all. Right? Instead of just being like, well, that's what I'm supposed to eat. Like, I'm just going to eat it. Like,
right.
You don't have to. You don't have to buy kale ever in your life if you don't want to. There's no, like, I don't know, do you got like stock in kale? Like, you don't got to buy it.
You're right. I like what I like. I just need to have less of it at one time.
Mm-hmm.
That's more manageable.
Moderation, right? That's the buzzword. That's the key to everything. It makes the world go round. So if you're like, yeah, I want to have pizza, so I'm going to have pizza. And then assess where you're at tomorrow. Because we may say on Sunday, like, I'm going to have lasagna on Thursday, right? And then Thursday comes in, the thought of lasagna is like the last thing you want.
Right. That's where meal prepping.
Yeah. So like,
too.
You don't need to do that. Just like get off work and be like, all right, I'm going to make the decision right then about what I want, instead of trying to force myself into a space, right? Again, you're forcing yourself to do these things that don't feel good at all.
That does make sense. I'll try it.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's really just about, working with that hunger fullness scale for sure, and kind of being able to rate where you're at with those things. If you think the journaling will help, then do it. If not, then don't. And I think just allowing yourself to accept the invite with your coworkers to go out and eat and just eat whatever you want. Those are at least two things that are really attainable and stuff that's going to be like easy short-term goals for you to keep us moving in the direction that we need to.
All right.
Do you think you can do that?
I will.
Okay. And if it doesn't work, don't do it. Right? If you get to doing something and you're like, I hate every second of this, just don't do it. I'm not going to be offended.
We'll find something else that'll work, maybe.
Right. Yeah, we are tailoring this to you, right? You're not tailoring to other things. We are tailoring other things to you so that you can be happy and that you can feel successful and get to where you want to be.
All right. I'll do my homework this week.
You sure?
I'm committed to it.
All right, we'll see.
Give it my best.
I have faith. I think you're going to be great.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Chip. So I want to shine a light on a few things that happened in my session with Chip. So one of the things is really giving him the space to share how he feels, be open with his ideals and all of those kinds of things. One of the things that's always really important to me is challenging any kind of morality or rules around food. So that healthy versus unhealthy or good versus bad food is something that I always like to bring in, because it really challenges that diet culture piece that I've been talking about previously. And so we touched a little bit on the intuitive eating, but I think the biggest piece that I want to really take away from this is that it is a process, and it's okay to take the little steps along the way. And realistically speaking, like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You don't have to get that gym membership. You don't have to eat the kale. You don't have to do those things. And so really the idea is just to help you feel empowered to be able to share what you want and realize that your therapy, your journey, your recovery can really be catered to exactly what you want and what feels good for you.